unbreakable. For over 400 years, that's the word people have used to describe the bond between India and Russia. Their friendship started with trade routes in the 17th century and grew into a strategic alliance that has shaped the modern world. It's such a reliable partnership that India's External Affairs Minister has called it a constant in global politics. But what if the unthinkable happened? What if this historic friendship was suddenly shattered by the march of armies? This is the story of how an unbreakable alliance could be broken. The unbreakable bond. So, just how big of a deal would this be? To get it, you have to understand how deep this friendship really goes. The story of India and Russia isn't some fair-weather friendship. It's a deep, multi-generational partnership that has survived fallen empires and massive shifts in global power. This connection goes way back, long before you might think. As early as the 17th century, merchants were making the dangerous trip between the Mughal Empire and Tsarist Russia. Russia even tried to set up a formal diplomatic mission to India way back in 1646, which shows you how early they saw a mutual interest. That specific mission didn't work out because of local conflicts, but the trade routes kept humming along, building a quiet connection. But things really took off in the 20th century. In April 1947, just months before India became independent, the two countries made it official. As a brand new nation, India wanted to find its own way, and it found a crucial partner in Moscow. The USSR was a cornerstone of India's dream of self-sufficiency, pouring money into heavy industry, mining, and energy. India's famous 5-year economic plans, they were modelled on the Soviet system. This partnership quickly became a strategic shield. During the Cold War, Moscow was New Delhi's best friend on the world stage. When other countries challenged India's control over Kashmir and Goa, the Soviet Union used its veto power at the UN Security Council to protect India at least 6 times. And after a tough loss in the 1962 war with China, who stepped in to be India's main military supplier? The Soviets, who even gave India advanced MiG-21 fighter jets, technology they had refused to give their own ally at the time, China. The high point of this friendship came in 1971. A crisis in Bangladesh was escalating, and India was facing down a hostile alliance of Pakistan, the United States, and China. In that critical moment, the two nations signed the Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace, Friendship, and Cooperation. It was a security guarantee that gave India the backup it needed. When the US 7th Fleet steamed toward the Bay of Bengal as a show of force, Soviet warships were right there to act as a powerful deterrent, preventing anyone else from jumping into the war. Even the collapse of the Soviet Union couldn't break them apart. India quickly re-upped its ties with the new Russian Federation, calling it a strategic partnership in 2000, and later upgrading it to a special and privileged strategic partnership in 2010. You can see this partnership everywhere in India's military. The roar of Indian Sukhoi jets, the power of its T-90 tanks, and the quiet threat of its nuclear-powered submarines are all part of this legacy. They've even built world-class weapons together, like the BrahMos supersonic cruise missile. The fact that Russia delivered the advanced S-400 air defense system to India, despite a ton of international pressure, says everything about their modern trust. And it goes way beyond defense. Russia is a huge energy partner for India, with its oil becoming a critical lifeline. Russia also helps India build its nuclear power plants, a partnership that stayed strong even when India faced sanctions from the West. From space exploration to wanting a world with multiple global powers, not just one, the two have been in lockstep. This deep history of trust is exactly what makes the idea of an invasion so insane. It wouldn't just be an act of war, it would be trashing a 400-year legacy. The catalyst. So what on earth could trigger such a crazy event? In our world, it's pretty much impossible. But for a what if, we have to imagine the world has changed in some pretty terrifying ways. Let's jump forward in time to the late 2030s. The trigger isn't one single thing, but a perfect storm of 3. First, the climate crisis is way worse than we thought. The polar ice caps have melted so fast that the Northern Sea route is open all year. This has uncovered trillions of dollars in Arctic resources. oil, gas and minerals are all up for grabs. Russia, which controls over half the Arctic coastline, moves fast to claim it all, reopening old Soviet military bases to enforce its control. For the rest of the world, especially hungry industrial powers, this is a huge problem. Second, there's a massive political shake-up in India. A new ultra-nationalist government has taken over, driven by a philosophy of total independence. They believe India can only achieve its destiny by cutting ties with everyone, whether it's Western markets or Russian military gear. They see the old friendship with Russia not as a partnership, but as a weakness. Their message is powerful: we will secure our future by taking what we need, not by asking for it. And the third piece of the puzzle: Russia looks weak. In this future, it's tied down in a bunch of small, grinding conflicts on its European borders that are draining its army and its money. Its supply lines, which have been a problem in past wars, are stretched thin, and corruption has gotten so bad that reports of paper battalions, units that exist only on paper, and empty supply depots are everywhere. Then comes the flashpoint. A group of Indian energy companies, backed by the new government, sends ships to a disputed part of the Barents Sea to challenge Russia's claims. Moscow's reaction is swift. A Russian naval patrol seizes an Indian drilling ship and arrests the crew. This is exactly the excuse the new Indian government was waiting for. They spin it as an attack on India's economic rights and launch their plan: Operation Dharma Chakra, or the turning of the wheel of righteousness. Their strategists think this is their one shot. They believe Russia's best troops are tied up in Europe, and its logistics are a mess. A quick knockout blow into the Russian heartland, they figure, could shatter the government, force a regime change, and secure Arctic resources for a century. The unthinkable betrayal is in motion. The Indian army gets its orders. March north. The invasion and its consequences. The invasion starts not with a bang, but with the slow, grinding movement of thousands of vehicles. Operation Dharma Chakra is a stunningly ambitious plan, born from arrogance and doomed from the start. The main goal is to cut Russia in half by seizing the main logistical routes that connect its European heartland to Siberia and the Arctic. On paper, it looks brilliant. In reality, it's a logistical nightmare. The first and biggest enemy isn't an army, it's the map. There's no easy flat road from New Delhi to Moscow. Indian tanks have to cross the Himalayas, or get permission to pass through Central Asian countries that are traditionally Russia's allies. Let's say, just for this scenario, that they manage to bully these countries into staying neutral. The Indian army still has to cross the massive, dry steppes of Kazakhstan, and then the endless expanse of Russia itself. History has a pretty clear lesson here. Invading Russia is a logistical death sentence. Just ask Napoleon in 1812 or Hitler in 1941. Their giant armies weren't crushed in one big battle. They were bled dry by the sheer size of the country, by defenders who burned everything as they retreated, and by the brutal Russian winter. The Indian military, as powerful as it is, would be no different. As of the mid-2000s, Russia has the world's largest tank fleet and a massive advantage in artillery, perfect tools for a defensive war on home turf. The Indian advance starts to sputter within weeks. They make some early gains against surprise border guards, but the same problem that hit Napoleon's army shows up immediately. The supply lines get stretched impossibly thin. A tank without fuel is just a steel coffin. A soldier without ammo is a liability. The seasonal mud, the Rasputitsa, turns roads into swamps, just like it did to the Germans. Russian jets start picking off the long, vulnerable columns of Indian supply trucks. While India's military is one of the world's strongest, with around 1.5 million active and reserve personnel, it's mostly built to fight wars on its own borders. An invasion thousands of kilometers from home against the world's second strongest military is a whole different ballgame. Russia, though stretched, calls for a mass mobilization, swelling its ranks with a potential fighting force of over 3 million. They start to pull back strategically, luring the Indian forces deeper into the trap and burning everything behind them. The geopolitical fallout for India is instant and total. The world is horrified. The United States and Europe, who are no friends of Russia, still slap crippling sanctions on India, freezing its assets and cutting it off from the global financial system. India's partnerships with the West, gone overnight. China's reaction is the nail in the coffin. Seeing its main rival, India, stuck in a suicidal war, and its unofficial ally, Russia, under attack, Beijing sees a golden opportunity. It quietly starts sending supplies and money to Moscow. Even worse, China moves a massive number of troops to the Indian border in the Himalayas, threatening to open a second front that India has no way to defend. And of course, Pakistan doesn't miss its chance. With the bulk of the Indian army stuck in Russia, it launches a full-scale invasion to take all of Kashmir. India's homeland is now under attack. Economically, this is pure suicide for India. The multi-billion-dollar trade with Russia disappears. The cheap Russian oil that fueled its economy is cut off. The Indian rupee crashes. The war cost billions a day, draining the treasury. Most importantly, the defense partnership is over. India's military is built on Russian weapons and spare parts. As tanks and jets are destroyed, there are no replacements. The Indian war machine grinds to a halt. By the time the first snows of winter start to fall, Operation Dharma Chakra isn't an invasion anymore. It's a desperate fight for survival. The lead Indian divisions are surrounded, starving, and freezing hundreds of miles from help. The unthinkable betrayal has led to an unimaginable disaster. New world order. The aftermath is just ruin for India. The war ends not with a peace treaty, but with the total collapse of the Indian forces in Russia. The once proud army that marched north is shattered. Hundreds of thousands are captured, and the loss of equipment sets India's military back by decades. Back home, things are even worse. Facing defeat in Russia and against Pakistan, and with the threat of a Chinese invasion looming, the ultra-nationalist government is overthrown. A new emergency government has to beg for peace, accepting humiliating terms. It gives up territory in Kashmir to Pakistan and is forced to make border concessions to China. India, once a rising global power, is now a broken, indebted, and globally isolated nation. Russia comes out of the war badly hurt, but it won. It has suffered huge losses, but it successfully defended the motherland, flipping the script on its supposed decline. The Kremlin's power is stronger than ever, and its control over the Arctic is complete. The support from China during the war cements a powerful new Eurasian alliance, a Beijing-Moscow axis that stands directly against the West. The United States and its allies are left looking at a completely different world. Their big strategic bet on India as a democratic rival to China has failed in the most spectacular way possible. The global balance of power has shifted, but not towards New Delhi. It has shifted towards a newly confident alliance between Beijing and Moscow. And that brings us back to today. In our world, the special and privileged strategic partnership between India and Russia is still one of the most stable relationships in politics. It's a bond built on decades of trust and shared interests. This crazy hypothetical invasion just goes to show how strong that bond is. It illustrates that the true strength of the Indo-Russian relationship isn't just in the tanks and missiles they trade, but in a shared history that makes the idea of them turning those weapons on each other almost impossible to imagine. Shattering that alliance wouldn't just be a betrayal of the past, it would be a move that would irrevocably break the future. The bond between India and Russia has proven to be one of history's most resilient partnerships, but alliances can shift in unexpected ways. What do you think is the most unbelievable alliance in history? Let us know in the comments.